It felt like an exorcism. Oh my God, I'm not even thinking these thoughts right now. I'm not even speaking. I'm listening, and someone else is using my voice. I am completely sharing a brain with somebody else right now. And when my therapist asked me what I thought about that experience, I said, I think there's more of me. And she said, I think so too. I was finally learning that all of the thoughts in my head weren't just foreign voices or passive thoughts. They were separate fragments of myself talking to each other. And you know, I always thought I was endlessly creative, or I could keep myself entertained for hours. And I'm now discovering that it's because I'm just listening to all of my parts talking to each other in my own head. I'm a storyteller because I'm always telling stories, but inside my own brain and from different narrators. And those different narrators have different motives, whether to distract, to entertain, to pass the time, or to cope from the trauma I was so desperately trying to repress. But I realized that, oh, that's what I'm doing? Yeah, I guess I've always been talking to my parts. I just didn't know it. So I gotta like freaking keep up with it, JC? What a concept.
Yeah, I shouldn't have gotten pants for Puerto Rico in August, JC.
Damn it, JC!
JC, you're far too clumsy to be painting in an actually cute outfit. No more going to Target, JC. What the heck kind of a stroke was that, JC? Golly.
That's not good, JC. That's kind of weird.
Good job, JC. Good job.
But over time, all that repression of pain and ignoring of my parts started to take over. And I was hitting rock bottom. I felt like I was dying inside, that my body was shutting down, that my mind was giving up, and that any control I had over my parts was quickly diminishing. And they had seized over all of my actions. They took control of all of my thoughts. And they were shouting, begging at me for help. And so I finally got some. I checked into a trauma treatment center, and I finally started getting to the bottom of what was wrong with me. And I had always wondered what was wrong with me, and now I knew what it was. But it wasn't scary, it wasn't startling. If anything, it was the first wave of relief I had ever felt to finally understand, oh, that's what's going on. There are separate people inside of me, living in me and using my brain. So if you like me, you must like the whole community, because I do not live alone inside my head. Nor do I live alone in my body. So I had always thought that I had superpowers, and one of them was that I could just turn off pain and never feel it again. I essentially made myself invincible until doing that started killing me from inside, and my body froze. I even thought I was having a stroke at one point, and I couldn't feel anything physically anymore. It wasn't even numb, it was beyond that. I felt nothing. And now I'm coming to understand that all that pain that I turned off, it was frozen in time, because my parts felt responsible for holding on to that pain and not letting future parts ever feel it again. But I was ready to feel again, and I was ready to meet my parts, because it was finally time for me to take back their pain, to feel my body, feel all the emotions I'd been suppressing for so long. And in doing so, I can let my parts know for the first time that they didn't need to be hypervigilant or scared, that they were finally safe, and that they could finally rest. When I started working on College JC and really got into the nitty-gritty of healing, she started giving me back the parts in the body that she felt, and that was in the surgery scar where she held most of her pain. And as I started to work on more parts, they started giving me back more parts of my body. And you guys, it hurt. It hurt like hell. My therapist now, every day she'd ask me, okay, where do you feel that part in your body? And I would go, everywhere, because everything was in so much pain all of a sudden, all at once. And I was undergoing nervous system deregulation, and so I was feeling more than I'd ever have all at once. And once I had started talking to College JC, I kind of opened the floodgates, because all of my other parts were like, she can hear us now, we can talk now, and they all started reaching for the microphone, and it got pretty chaotic pretty quickly. And so at this point in treatment, even though I'm relieved to finally understand what's going on, I soon understood that I was facing an uphill battle, because now I had turned on all of my parts. And what I'm about to show you kind of exemplifies all of the chaos that was happening inside my brain during this time. So one night I'm at home and I decide to record one of my nightly team meetings with all the ladies in my head. And it was the one and only time I ever recorded it. One, because watching it back afterwards was so hard to see that I knew I could never watch these ever again. But also because when you put a camera on yourself, I kind of felt like I was deflating the experience because I didn't want to come across as crazy, knowing that like I might use this for evidence. And so it felt a little bit inauthentic, but it's still crazy that this is what I was able to capture, knowing that I was being recorded, if that makes sense. And I've told you guys, I can't act. I was shunned from the entertainment industry because I can't act. So know that all of this is real. But what I'm about to show you shows a completely normal person discovering all at once that they have a chronic dissociation disorder and that there are multiple personalities living inside of her. And I captured it on camera. So I learned how to start talking to my parts, but once they all start talking, it's kind of hard to get them to stop. And the thoughts come so quickly that sometimes it's hard to catch, and I have to retrace my step to catch that thought again. Oh shoot. I'm always looking for my future self, and it's always through a lens. That was me finally understanding my depersonalization, where I didn't have any first-person memories because I always saw my life through photos and videos. But once all my parts start talking, my body starts hurting. Because as I get them all activated, I realize they all hold different parts of the body. And so it starts to hurt everywhere. I need to stretch and walk around and give myself a massage. And talking to them ends up being quite physically painful for myself.
Oh, because I've always been documenting for my future self. Because I'm never living in the now.
My parts told me that I've always struggled with staying present, and that's why they've all felt the need to document my life so relentlessly. It's because we knew subconsciously we were gonna forget all of the first-person memories. We were dissociating throughout most of my life, that we weren't ever present. So we had to collect things, record everything, take photos, in order just to remember basic things about my life. And the more I talk to them, the more it becomes harder to breathe because I'm always holding my breath because they're always stuck in tension and scared.
I've been fighting for my body. Because only the true self can live in the present.
I'm never able to be present because I don't have control of my eyes or my body. All of my parts do, because that's where they turned off the pain and that's where they held all of their trauma.
We each hold part of the body.
And it really does feel like an exorcism talking to my parts because I could feel them trying to get rid of the pain in the body, trying to turn it off because they all felt like that was their role, was to keep me from feeling all of the deep emotions and all of the hurting pain. But the more I talk to my parts, the easier to identify who is speaking because my parts are all different and they're all stuck in time. I have parts that are older, that are younger, some that can't keep up, and some that feel like they have to explain a lot more to my other parts.
This is the part of me that's smarter than everyone else. Bug.
So right there, I somehow used my eyes and I thought I saw a bug, which was a big thing of why do I keep getting startled at bugs? And then I grabbed my phone because one of us communicates through writing. And in my notes app, I found why I decided to laugh in this moment.
You're kidding me.
That part reminded me of when we moved to our first apartment, and it was not a very safe or clean apartment, and there was a cockroach infestation despite everything we tried to do. And I guess I didn't realize how traumatized I was by bugs until that part reminded me of that traumatic period of my life. And so the rest of my night just kind of looks like this. I'm just talking to my parts in my head. I'm stretching and trying to get the pain out of my body. I have to massage my surgery scar where Collins JC was coming through. And I try to breathe and let my parts know that I'm there that they're safe, and it's okay to start communicating with me. After that nightly session, I went to my therapist and I said, I need help taking back control. I need to learn how to hold the microphone for all of my parts. I had to film this section separately, so fair warning, it's going to get a little heavy. But before treatment, I'd so often be in the middle of speaking and think, wow, I literally don't agree with what I'm saying right now. And now I'm understanding it's because I have multiple ladies in my head. But it was starting to get to the point where I could stop and be like, wait, who is saying that? Why are you saying that? What's going on? Let's chit chat here. And I was better able to create a dialogue with all of my parts. And as a result, kind of effortlessly, my parts started becoming more clearly defined. Similar to how college JC just kind of appeared and I could see what she was wearing and she gave me a tour of her life. I could start doing that with all of my other parts. I didn't choose what they looked like or what they told me. They presented themselves to me. And when I allowed them to talk one at a time, it was effortless and easy because they also had been waiting so long to present themselves to me. And in therapy, my therapist asked me, okay, what do you want to start calling these parts? Do you have a name for them? Are they telling you their name? And I realized that, well, yeah, like these weren't random entities that lived inside of me. You know, it's not like I have a British lady that's in there or, you know, some violent man or things outside of who I am. They were all me. They were all just versions of me trapped in time. They were completely linear because they were all created at all of the different points of trauma in my life. And so they didn't need names because they were all JC. There was high school JC, college JC, housewife JC, LA JC. And in a way, again, I think I've always kind of known this because not only have I referred to myself in the plural in the past, but I've even referred to them by these names. So for background, going all the way back to little JC.
It feels like I'm putting myself back in middle school JC.
This is high school freshman JC. We can officially kill old school prom queen JC. It's a little sneak peek of college JC.
So I don't know, I just kind of want to go back and give like college JC a hug.
But that's high school JC and college JC.
These parts were created during times of insurmountable overwhelm, unimaginable pain, and the undeniable need to survive. And so to survive, my brain would completely shut down and it would start over. As if nothing would happen, it would bury the trauma and just carry on. And I've been comparing myself to a Sims character because that's truly what it felt like. It felt like I was a video game character being dropped into the game where you're told about your backstory and you know it happened, but you didn't actually experience it or live it or have it actually impact you. But you know about it, but now you get to create this new chapter. You get to customize your avatar, pick your outfit, pick your career, and just completely mold your new life as if nothing in the past ever happened. I got to create a whole new version of myself anytime something traumatic would happen. And again, believe it or not, but this process of creating a new part, creating a new alter, I've actually caught on camera. So I've documented everything. I've recorded everything. I wrote everything down, had collections of videos, scrapbooks, everything. So in that December that I've been talking about, where it felt like a curse was thrust upon me, that I was spiraling and hitting rock bottom, I really remember thinking to myself, I'm not gonna make it. I'm not gonna make it this time. I could literally feel my brain shutting down, and something inside me told me to put up my phone and record myself. I don't know why, but I recorded a 22-minute long video, and it's of me just standing in the dark. I dance, I cry, I rub my head, I pace around, I dance again. I appear to do a whole lot of nothing, and at some points the video gets so dark you can't even see me. I'm only illuminated by whatever was flickering on the TV. But I felt so inclined to record what was happening. And even that night, I found in my phone weirder things that I felt inclined to record. I found some of the most beautiful words written in my notes app, which I now know were written by the poet who lives inside of me. One of the things I wrote was, after decades of starving for the will to live, how do you bear the force of its taste? Because I think I lost my appetite a long time ago. I wanted to die, but I also equally wanted to live because I had dozens of screenshots from some of the lyrics that I was listening to. Like this one from 7 by Sleeping at Last, where it says, "I want to be here, truly be here, to watch the ones that I love bloom, and to make room to love them through and through. And so I feel hope deep in my bones that tomorrow will be beautiful." And I, of course, have this 22-minute long video of me just in the darkness doing nothing. And everything from that night, this video, those screenshots, the notes, it all synced to my Google Cloud. And I revisited it a few months later in confusion, thinking this 22-minute long video is just taking up space. I should delete it. And I couldn't, because I felt so inclined to keep everything from that night because it felt important. And now I know why. Half of my parts wanted to be dead, and the other half wanted to stay alive. And so we compromised and did both. I was literally recording me dying that night and making a new part. It was something I'd done 9 other times in my past, only I didn't know that that's what I was doing. My psychiatrist noted that I had suicidal ideation because I could never kill myself. But this was my version of it, because I knew I could never do the real thing. And so rather than attempting to physically end my life, my mind found another way to survive by compartmentalizing the trauma and completely creating a new part inside my brain. Therapy professionals refer to this as an identity death or self-annihilation in dissociative disorders, where the unbearable distress just leads to a subconscious erasing or suppressing of the current self. It's a survival mechanism, just in a different form. And so my old part becomes inaccessible and my new part takes over. And come January, just a few days after that 22-minute long video, I started over. I started a new chapter, I got a new beginning, and I became a completely new person.
I was at an all-time low, you guys. And it's January now. I do want to say that I am feeling better, but I barely made it out of 2023, I feel like. I tend to hide the darkness in me because I want people to see the sunshine, and it's not always the case, you guys. It just felt like towards the end there that the universe was like, I don't know, like you're ready for, I don't know, the next step, or that this is the hardest year of your life. So let's just pound you with every bad thing we have left, because in the new year, it'll be like a phoenix rising from the ashes. It'll be a full karmic reset. And as long as I could have just survived December and the year of 2023, then things will get better from here. And so once I get past that, I truly feel like 2024 is a fresh start. It is just a new chapter, a new beginning. I'm 30 years old and a new life begins. I'm in a new space now, even though it is the same apartment. I feel like mentally it's a new space, physically it's a new space. It really did feel like this new beginning.
But I also think that serves as a new beginning. And I'd like to think that the universe is trying to purge me of some of my old life.
That's the old JC. It's time to start the new JC. It's time to start fresh with new credit cards, fresh with a new ID. I don't know, it just feels like this new era of JC, this new time of needing to start over, and just this new chapter in my life. It just kind of feels like I'm gearing up to a new version of JC. And I can't wait to take you along into this journey and into the next chapter of my life that is 30 years old. And I always thought that that was my superpower, that I could start over and create a whole new me. I was a superhero. I could be whoever I wanted to be and start over like a video game character, erase all the bad memories, simply knowing they happened, but never actually having to process it because I was fine. But after 10 times of doing that, that was the limit. I created too many parts and I was losing control of them. There was no more room left in my mind, no place else in my body for my parts to go. My brain was shutting down, I had no motivation, and I had no will to live. And when I created that last part in December, I knew it was the last one because I didn't have it in me. to create another one ever again. When I said at the beginning of this series that I should be dead, it's because I've already died 10 times over, and I just simply didn't have it in me to ever do it again. But then you guys know what happened from there. I, mentally spiraled, but then my sister got pregnant and I found a new will to live. And for the first time ever, I was willing to get help. And now what I'm understanding is that I was ready to get help. So there's a common saying that when the body is ready to heal, it will tell you. In that moment of my sister getting pregnant, of my brain switching, of something inside of me deciding we wanted to live, I realized that the shadows of my brain were finally ready to come to light, and that all of the parts that were deep down inside my subconscious were ready to show themselves. And collectively, body and mind, I was finally ready to heal. And so I checked into a trauma treatment center and I started recognizing all the weird habits I was doing, like closing my curtains, washing my hands, changing my clothes, starting a new task, all these unexplainable things. They now became explainable because I was realizing, oh, it's because I have parts. I wasn't going crazy. I wasn't spiraling. I didn't have schizophrenia. I was switching. So all those episodes can finally be explained. At night, I was going into these dissociative trances because I had all of my parts turned on in my brain and it just became a trance-like state. So we're just in there talking to each other. Like I said, it feels like I'm just watching a movie. It's very passive and effortless. But then after a certain amount of time, a part would take over the body, not just the thoughts, but they'd take over the body. Then they'd use their eyes and become present and they'd think they'd see a bug. They'd use their eyes and go, oh, okay, it's not a bug. Then what they would do is they'd immediately go and check on the curtains and close them to make sure that we were in private and to make sure that we were safe. They would then go and wash their hands because they just came into the body and they needed to feel clean, and that was the easiest way to do it. Then they'd go and they'd change their clothes. Because again, coming into the body, maybe they felt that they were cold, that they were warm, but also that they were uncomfortable, that this isn't what they chose to put on, and they pick a new outfit for themselves. Then they start a task, whatever task they wanted to do. All the while, we're still all chit-chatting up in our head, and then it would happen again. It would repeat. A new part would take over, make sure we were safe, make sure we were clean, comfortable, and then decides what we're all gonna be doing. And it just was happening every single night. And now I'm understanding that it was just my part switching. And I'd been doing that for years because I kept saying it never felt foreign. All of my thoughts and all of my actions, they all felt like me. But I was right. They were all me. It was all just different versions of me. And again, in that very initial psych evaluation, my psychiatrist clocked it, where she said, "You have such a strong sense of identity." And she was right. Because all of my identities were of me. They weren't random entities, they weren't random people. It was always me, and I've always known who I am. And so now that I'm finally getting clarity on all of the craziness that was happening, I was finally ready to start the healing process. So at this point, I had learned to talk to all of my parts, and the communication lines were open and overflowing. I used the IFS tools that I was learning in therapy to help establish that I am the true self, and I'm the facilitator that would be holding the microphone for all of my parts. And the goal was, while I was in a trauma treatment center, was to essentially address all of the parts that were in the deepest pain and who were screaming the loudest. And so I would essentially have these team meetings in my brain where I could see all of my parts appear in front of me as if it's a conference room, and I would hold the microphone and I had to get them all to agree to step aside and let us work on certain parts one at a time. They had to know that their turn was coming. I'm not going to be ignoring them. I know that they're there. But that we had to address the others that were in the deepest pain and who held the most trauma while we're in a trauma treatment center. And they were starting to agree, and the screaming got less and less. And I had a writing group. It was one of my favorite sessions during the week because my poet, I guess, gets to show herself, but here's something that I wrote in one of my writing group sessions. Harmony, balance. It's what I've always been missing. For so long, we all fought over the microphone, begging to be the loudest. But when 10 voices scream, nothing can be heard. But when 10 voices sing, it can be a masterpiece. I just needed to learn how to direct my choir, how to conduct my orchestra, because 10 different melodies is a cacophony. But 10 collaborative harmonies, well, that can be a symphony. And so I just learned how to direct my choir, direct my symphony. And all of my parts started singing together, and we started healing together because I finally understood what I had to do. I didn't have to go home and study and research and document. All I had to do was listen. I no longer was intellectualizing my feelings and begging to feel emotions. I just had to listen to my parts. And they were now just so easily telling me their story. And things got better. Memories from my past started to come back that I didn't even realize I forgot about. And it's like I've lived this whole life that I knew about, but I didn't actually remember. And now it's all coming back to me in first-person perspective. And it was beautiful. Healing started becoming so effortless because I not only have this strong sense of self-identity, but I always had this strong sense of self-love. I love myself and I love my parts, but my parts needed to know that I loved them as well. The next part that I worked on was the one who held the trauma with the gynecologist and the lawsuit. And I was able to alleviate all of that guilt and the shame that that part held. And I was able to forgive myself. Maybe not forgive my school, definitely not forgive the man, but forgive myself for all of the self-punishing that I was doing for all of those years. And after working on that part and really healing that part, I was able to make my first doctor's appointment in almost 10 years. And I was able to do that because that part finally felt safe. I finally took away her pain and I held it for her and I let her rest. And life started getting better too. I significantly decreased my dissociating. It still happens. That's gonna be a lot of work. But laundry was getting easier. The dishes weren't taking me nearly as long. I started only needing to close my curtains once a night because I knew that I was safe. I now look in the mirror and I look at my face, and I still have a lot of work to do with my body image issues, but I'm not going and pinching my tummy anymore. I'm looking at my face and I'm seeing myself in real time and not from just behind a lens. I was calming down. My nervous system was finally regulating. I was slowing down my life significantly, and I was becoming present, which is what my therapists were begging me to do from day one stepping into that trauma treatment center. And instead of going home every night to do all my researching and problem solving, I started projects that made me slow down and stay present. I am wearing one of them right now. So this here is my therapy jacket. So in therapy, when you're on the couch crying to your therapist, it does get pretty cold in there. So I bought this jacket, and every night I went home and I embroidered an icon that represented my day in therapy. And so I would go home and I'd spend time with my parts. I taught myself how to hand embroider. And I realize now that, oh yeah, this was just another form of me documenting and recording my experience, which is something that I think I'll always do. But it was a great reminder of my time in the trauma treatment center, but also how I got to know my parts by finally becoming present. And then I began to reflect on the past few weeks in treatment, the past few years of my life, and just my whole life in general. And I started just having daily epiphanies of the habits and actions that I never understood that can all be traced back to this. And it was like my whole life was getting so much clarity. And I remember towards the end of my time in the treatment center, I had a beautiful moment with all of my parts where I thanked each and every one of them for documenting my life so relentlessly, for ensuring that everything was captured in some way, because I knew mentally I was going to lose it. And I knew that doing that was so important, and it was, because it was vital in me finally understanding everything about this diagnosis. It also made me realize that, oh my God, I did have a rainbow aura, because it's not just me alone in my body, it's the 10 versions of myself from my past. So let's fast forward to my final days in treatment and get into the nitty-gritty of my final diagnosis. So one of the craziest things about this is it turns out I've never had bipolar disorder. That was a shock because that was something that was so integral to my identity over the past few years because it has explained so many of my weird habits and mental distresses. But it turns out that the depressive episodes that I was having was most likely due to parts holding trauma and repressing pain, as well as the emotional exhaustion from dissociation. And again, the dissociation, turns out that that uses a lot of brain activity when you got 10 ladies contributing to all of your thoughts and actions, that's what was zapping me of my energy and putting me deeper into these depressive episodes. Then with my hypomanic episodes, that most likely were my parts switching into more outwardly energetic and engaging parts that take over and think, wow, we have the body, we have all this energy, let's use it. But then it puts me deeper into the cycle of all of these fluctuating moods and energy levels. So the fluctuation definitely made it seem like it was bipolar cycling, and the medication that I have been taking was still helping with that mood regulation. So it turns out it's less of a chemical imbalance in my brain and more so from a dissociative disorder. But again, what disorder do I have? Because I got this dissociation, I got these multiple personalities, what's happening here? That's where it gets a little tricky because I actually got 2 different votes of what I actually have. So let me explain. So my first 2 therapists over here said, you have DID, which is dissociative identity disorder, which is formerly known as multiple personality disorder. Now I've been using that term in a few like TikToks and videos. One, because of like clickbait, I'm trying to get some views going here. I put a lot of work into this series. But 2, because to me, it feels like the multiple personalities is such a different symptom and disorder than the dissociating. They were both affecting me so differently that it's like, oh, I wanted to separate those 2 and not just use a loop together word, if that makes sense. But here's the thing. So my therapist, those 2 therapists, they said, you're not actually DID, you're DID-ish. And so the 2 diagnoses that I got from them was DID and OS, meaning dissociative identity disorder that needs more exploration. Essentially, they were saying like, yeah, it seems like you have it, but you need a lot more time in treatment with psychiatrists to map out your inner world and really solidify that, yep, you have dissociative identity disorder. Then my other 2 therapists over here were like, nope, absolutely not. You do not have DID because you do not meet all of the qualifications to have DID. So even if you do more exploring, you don't even meet all of the qualifications for that. What you have is OSDD, which means other specified dissociative disorder. Basically, it means you're DID-ish, but not quite enough. So here's the catch-all term to just describe everything that's similar, but not quite that. And they explained to me that dissociative disorders are on a spectrum, and a complex one at that doesn't have as much research involved into it this day and age. And the way symptoms can show up vary from person to person. This is a very trauma-based disorder, so it's gonna look different for everybody, and it's gonna be on this crazy grand spectrum. And you know, I am on that spectrum in my own unique way. I'm not DID and I'm not nothing. I'm somewhere in between. Throughout my time in the trauma treatment center and those crazy 10 weeks that I spent there, I learned that I had hypervigilance, PTSD, depersonalization, a dissociation disorder, and multiple personalities living inside of me. When I started this series, I said that I got 5 life-changing diagnoses, but these actually aren't the 5 life-changing diagnoses that I'm talking about. These all comprise the singular OSDD diagnosis that I received. So essentially they were sub-diagnoses that made up one of the diagnoses that I'm talking about. And I decided that diagnosis, I'm okay with it just being OSDD. I have no desire to continue treatment for the sole purpose of exploring if it is DID. I'm fine with it being in this other category. I'm fine with it being my own little unique version of coping with my trauma. Really, one of the main reasons I made this series is because of that OSDD diagnosis, because I had heard of DID. I saw the people doing their switches as a little party trick on TikTok,
etc.
But I had no idea what OSDD was. I'd never heard of it, and I've never heard any first count experiences of what that's even like, especially coming from a person who didn't know they had it, who felt completely normal, and who outwardly nobody would expect to have something like this. And so I truly felt like it was my responsibility to make this series, to show other people how this appears in people who have trauma, but how we seem completely normal and we don't seem like dangers to society. We don't seem like weirdos that have switching personalities to stay away from. I'm a completely normal person who almost didn't survive because of this. And I just felt so inclined to share that story, knowing that it might help some others out there as well. And I think a hard thing to come to terms with is that OSDD almost killed me. It gave me unexplainable habits. It took away my body. It commandeered my brain. And it made me give up on life. And yet I'm realizing that my superpower all along was also the OSDD. That's what was making me so quick-witted and intelligent, but also endlessly creative. I could connect with strangers on a bus or in the grocery store so effortlessly because I had different parts that could step in and easily relate to and connect with them. I could compartmentalize anything. I could turn off all of my pain. I could be a vibrant, happy, optimistic person, so much so that you would have no idea of the trauma I've experienced in my past. I have a plethora of skills and a multitude of hobbies and interests, and I've never felt bored in my life because I can always entertain with myself because I love myself. I've never been lonely because I've always had somebody to cry with, to laugh with, to live with. And I did have a superpower, and it's that there's 10 of me. And even though OSDD almost killed me, it also was my superpower. And I think they can both exist. And I think I've always known about it all along.
Now, I remember my idea for this journal was I would write my deepest, darkest secrets and I would sign it Love Shadow and not like from JC, so that one day I could like publish this book of deep, dark secrets as Shadow and nobody would know it was me, but it'd be like all these salacious secrets and scandals. I get just one page of this silly hand-me-down notebook. From here on out, I am a shadow, and these are my secrets. Love Shadow.
On my final day in the trauma treatment center, I got a certificate of completion, I got a graduation coin, and I got a pizza party. I was able to spend one last day with all of the program cohorts that I had spent the past brutal 10 weeks with, and everybody in my program holds such a special place in my heart. The relationships that I developed with them is invaluable. But I remember on that last day, I told one of my friends, like, hey, I got my final diagnosis, it's OSDD. And she was confused because, again, like myself, she had never heard of it. And I told her, it's basically like the in-between of all mental disorders. It's the catch-all to say, you're not quite this, so we'll put you in the other box. And she made me laugh because she said, wow, it sounds like you just invented your own mental illness. You should give it a name. And I smiled because I knew what I've had all along, and it already had a name. And so I called it. Thank you guys so much for watching this series, Shadow Brains. Please let me know in the comments if you have any questions about my therapy experience, about this disorder diagnosis, about the series at all. Let me know in the comments. I'd love to answer them here or maybe in some future videos about it. But I did want to give a little epilogue and give some updates about the future of my channel, as well as some other things that have happened since making this series. Now, of course, I'm still in therapy and I still have a long road of recovery in terms of continuing to heal my parts, heal from trauma, and deal with this new disorder. But I'm doing okay and I'm managing well. And I think a big part of that is I am so much more comfortable using my lawsuit money and using it for this, because I think deep down after all of these years, I never spent the money because I always knew I'd need it someday. Nothing felt important enough that I was like, nope, I'm gonna want this money someday. And so I held on to it and I never spent it. And that someday of needing it is now. And I'm more comfortable than ever using it to try to manage this disorder. And so I've been living with my parts and I've been making this series, and this series has been a labor of love. But I also want to note that it has been imperative to my healing, because when I left treatment, I just started telling friends and family about learning about the multiple personalities, the dissociation, and my attitude was like, isn't that crazy? Like, isn't it insane that all this was happening? Isn't it wild that I got this life-changing disorder? I know, it's crazy, right? I was still very flippant about it because I still hadn't fully processed what all of that even meant. And so when I undertook making this series, it really all came together in the sense of like, oh, that is crazy. Oh, that is insane. Okay, that is wild, everything that's happened. Okay, wow. And what's interesting is that I finished writing this series like a book in January. At the beginning of the January, basically all of these scripts were done. And so I was like, cool, I'm just gonna film these, edit these, and by February, I will have a 9-part series ready to go. I don't know what I was thinking because it took me more than 3 months to finally finish it. And so when I went back and I had to rewatch all of my vlogs, all of my videos, reread all of my journals, go through all of my photos, I had to process everything in real time. And I couldn't let myself repress the pain. And I had to let my parts heal with me. And so I had to take so many more breaks just to process and cry and really emotionally connect with all of these things that have happened, that it took a long time to make this series. And that probably didn't benefit me in the YouTube algorithm, but I don't know, it really did help me heal properly and appropriately. Making this series was therapeutic, it was cathartic, and it truly was instrumental in helping me process everything. And I'm really grateful for everybody's patience and for even tuning in to all of this. What's crazy is that I really did write this whole thing like a book. I guess that elementary school JC that always wanted to be an author was really coming through, because I ended up having to cut so much of this series down because it was taking too long. This was gonna be a 9-part series. I had all these separate side plots about spirituality. I go into my identity being mixed was a big thing. There was a thing about like eating disorders. I was gonna talk about how wild my therapy program was and like why I hated some of my therapists a little bit more in detail. But alas, cut for time and not important in this series, but maybe I will do some videos like that in the future. But that brings me to my next point. I'm not really feeling funny lately, and that means something drastic needs to happen. Moving forward for like the next few months, I kind of just want to do some fun story times again. You know, I have story times that I haven't told you because, I don't know, they didn't feel appropriate at the time, but I want to get back into some lighter content, some content that's much easier for me to edit, but just bring a little bit more levity back to my channel a little bit. We'll get back into some of our heavy stuff later on, but I don't know, I kind of just want to give myself a little break from that. So if you see me doing like silly, goofy story times in the coming weeks, I just needed to give myself a break. And if you miss all that stuff, go back and rewatch this series and see all the Easter eggs that you might have missed, because I was putting hints in there from episode 1. So I don't know, go back and see what you may have missed. But I will also say that I mentioned that OSDD is the first diagnosis of 5 life-changing diagnoses that I received in this 8-month period. Which sounds crazy that what? There's 4 more life-changing diagnoses? Yes, I will not be revealing them for quite some time. I understand now how much of an emotional burden just this one diagnosis was. They're like, maybe I'll never tell you guys. But I will reveal to you right this very minute, diagnosis number 2. So like I mentioned, I made my first doctor's appointment in 10 years, and the mystery of my body issues started to unravel. And that's because I learned that I have fibromyalgia. Now, fibromyalgia is a chronic pain and chronic fatigue condition often caused by trauma. So essentially, when I turned all of my parts on in my brain, they held parts of my body, and I essentially turned it on all at once. And once I did that, I couldn't turn it off. And it immediately put me in chronic pain. And as a result, my life has changed significantly. And I am documenting it all over on my vlog channel. So if you want to see in real time, picking up from right this moment, of how I'm managing both OSDD and fibromyalgia and just my life completely changing, feel free to go and subscribe to my vlog channel. It is called JC Hosts. And fun fact, I changed my name of that vlog channel from JC Aaron Vlogs to JC Hosts about a year ago because I had gotten my dream hosting job, and I wanted to use that channel more to document my career in the hosting entertainment industry. But now I learned I have multiple personalities. So now it's a play on words where JC hosts. I'm the host of all the ladies in my brain. So JC hosts gigs and JC hosts a bunch of ladies in her head. I don't know, I thought that was kind of a crazy coincidence, so I'm keeping the name. I don't know, I think some of this mental illness stuff is really interesting, especially from the perspective of, again, I'm just a normal person who never knew I had all of this. Like, and I'm able to describe it in a way because I am like this author and narrator that, I don't know, I think it's interesting if you have any type of fascination in this field that you might like the vlogs. They aren't going to be as vloggy, like I am working on being more present in my life and not living my life behind a camera. So they're definitely more like diaries, but if that interests you, make sure to go subscribe there. I actually just now uploaded, if you're watching in real time, the latest vlog dealing with a day in my life with fibromyalgia, and I have another vlog out of a day in the life of somebody with multiple personalities. So go and check those out, go subscribe, and follow my life in real time with all of this. And of course, follow my other social media platforms. So on TikTok, I will be starting this series, but in a bite-sized TikTok short style format. So you can go see this in a much more digestible format. But I also want to start going live answering questions about all of this. I gave you guys a lot of information and I'm sure I didn't cover a lot of things. So you can join me every Wednesday night, 6 p.m. Pacific time. If I can keep up with that, you can come join me live and ask anything you want. And I've never gone live before on TikTok, so I'd love to see some familiar names because I'm scared. But that starts this Wednesday. Again, if you're watching this in real time, come join me on TikTok, JC Aaron at 6 p.m. Pacific time, and we can hang out and you can ask me anything else you want. But the very, very, very last thing I wanted to mention before ending this series, my sister had her baby. My sister had her baby while I was making this series, and I met my niece for the first time, and it's crazy because this whole journey started the moment my sister got pregnant, and that baby was the reason I decided to get help and the reason I wanted to stay alive. And after meeting her, and after all of my parts got to meet her, I can confidently say that I will never need to create another part again. Because this new beginning, this new chapter, it's all me from here on out. Because the shadows no longer have to hide in my brain. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, for all of your support, for all your love. I love you guys so much. Toodles.